So welcome, everyone. We're grateful that you came. Tonight, we're going to give an overview about the proposed budget for the coming fiscal year, which is really the city's important policy document for how we're going to provide municipal services, and a snapshot as to where we are and what our plan is going forward. So I'm going to invite our Finance Director, Stephanie Sikkema, to lead us in this conversation tonight. We'll certainly save time for questions and comments, but first a presentation from Stephanie. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening. So the fiscal year 23-24 budget includes a citywide revenues for all funds combined with over $123 million. Property tax remains the city's largest revenue source, followed by sales tax. Total expenditures, excluding transfers for all budgeted funds, are estimated to be over $129 million. Many funds make up the total budgeted amount, with the largest being the general fund, with over $66 million, or 52% of the city's overall budget. The proposed general fund budget has been structurally balanced, with a net change in fund balance estimated to be over $176,000. This is a very small yet conservative number here. The budget policy requires that the general fund maintain the undesignated, unappropriated reserve amount equal to at least 17% of budgeted expenditures, or approximately $11.3 million. And as you can see, we're estimated to end at $20 million, which is well within that margin. This chart displays the fund balance over the past 7 years. Fund balance spiked to $25 million in fiscal year 2020-2021 and $24 million in 21-22, but is estimated to level back down to $20 million, almost 25% of general fund expenditures and transfers in the current year and proposed budget. Of this, over $3 million is assigned, which leaves approximately $17 million in unassigned fund balance. Total general fund revenues are projected to be over $81.8 million, a 2.5% increase from the fiscal year 22-23 adopted budget. This is largely due to an increase in property tax revenue. Sales tax is estimated to decrease slightly due to the impending recession. Licenses and permits are also projected to decrease, as construction is not expected to be as great as it was in the last 2 fiscal years. General fund expenditures for the fiscal year are projected to be over $66 million. This is a $2.6 million increase from the current fiscal year's original budget. Most of the expenditures are spent on salaries and benefits and overtime, but accumulates for about 78% of the total general fund budget. Expenditures overall were analyzed and projected to reflect actual expenses incurred based on current year's estimates in prior years. In general, this was a rollover budget with conservative revenue estimates, as we foresee a recession to come in the next year or two. The proposed budget has been based on prior year's actuals, with increases in line with base salary increases based on our memorandum of understandings with our collective bargaining groups. While estimated to be less than the current year's estimate of $7.4 million, general fund overtime is proposed to be approximately $7.2 million. Most of this overtime is from fire, at 51%, and police at 46%. Service levels are proposed to remain level across operations. No new positions are proposed to be added for this fiscal year. However, the following services are proposed to be maintained, and that's recreational programs, and including the sportsplex, special events. We're going to continue the quarterly newsletter. We're going to continue the increase in tree trimming cycles and landscape maintenance. And again, as I stated, no positions are proposed to be added. One of the city's long-term goals is to seek provisional approval from the California Department of Public Health for the creation of a fiscally sustainable municipal health department. Once the CDPH provides direction regarding the regulations and services, the city may assume a community health needs assessment, community health improvement plan, and other studies may be required by CDPH and the Public Health Accreditation Board. Until direction is provided, the city is in a holding pattern. Therefore, other than the CIP project, which includes the professional services agreement for these planning activities, the fiscal year 23-24 budget does not include revenue or expenditures for a health department. The proposed capital improvement plan includes over $110 million in projects over the next 5 years. $4.8 million have been completed recently, with $37 million in projects underway. $24 million are proposed for next fiscal year. In December, the city made available a budget survey. A total of 46 people responded, 87% of which were residents. Respondents were asked their opinion across 10 different categories. They ranked their infrastructure the most, followed by police, and then enhancing the city image. Additionally, when asked to assign dollars, they assigned them to police, followed by infrastructure, and then fire and EMS. In comparison with the city's proposed budget, expenditures citywide have been similarly allocated to police, then public services, which includes maintenance and city's infrastructure, followed by fire. This year's budget process, as I mentioned, kicked off with a budget survey in December. We presented the long-range financial forecast in April. This is the first of 2 community budget workshops, and then any subsequent follow-up from these meetings will be shared with Council on May 16th with hopeful consideration of adoption on June 6th. The proposed budget is available online along with the budget in brief, which is on the table outside for you to take with you today. And then I did want to mention that the city is in the process of updating their fee schedule, so we ask you to stay tuned for future dissemination of the fee study report and public engagement opportunities that will occur with that. Before I open it up to questions, though, I did want to show that while the budget is available online, it is also extremely user-friendly. We strive to make it very easy for someone to navigate through. So whatever page you click on, you can always return to the table of contents, and you can select another section. And again, no matter what page you go to, you're able to click back. So we're hoping that you'll check that out online. I do want to also give a big thanks to my team, which I do have here in the front row here and next to me. This budget is definitely a team production, and I appreciate their work on this. So with that, we will open it up to questions and discussion. Yes, Marcia.
Marcia, we have portable microphones, but we're tape recording this and broadcasting it. It would be helpful if you could speak in this microphone. You're welcome for either. Yeah, there is fine. Thank you.
Hello, good evening. Quick question. The budget survey.
Marcia, just for the meeting purposes, could you give us your name?
Marcia Solorio, resident, over 20 years. The budget survey, how was that put out? Because I don't recall ever seeing it. And you said there was 46 respondents out of how many? Is that citywide?
Yes. So in December, it went out with a quarterly newsletter. So there was an advertisement in the quarterly newsletter. It was online, and we also printed out QR codes that were disseminated at most of the public meetings as well, in addition to announcing it at every single city council meeting. Unfortunately, we didn't get as much respondents than we did from the year before, but I don't know if it's because they felt they just did a budget survey. So, because we really actually did more outreach and had it out for longer this year than we did the prior year. So I don't know if it was just they're thinking, well, I just did that last March. I don't need to do it again, because technically we had 2 in 1 year with how it was done with the longer span. So it is something that we'll try to continually increase opportunities for. But we did strive by having printouts at a lot of the recreational festivals. The public service director actually requested and had handouts so people could scan the QR codes at those events as well. So we did do our best to get it out as many avenues as possible.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Comments? this is really
we would
just
welcome
open up
comments,
for-
suggestions, thoughts, any kind of question, big questions, little questions. I appreciate that you folks came. Yeah. I know our city treasurer is here, and I'm appreciative that everybody took time out of their lives to be here tonight. Thank you.
Hello. Is it on? Okay, Marcia again. Can you talk a little bit about it, just like our liquidity? It's not super like budget related, but it kind of is. A lot of our residents kind of always have concerns about what does fund balance mean? How does that compare to like what's the money in the bank situation? So just to kind of have a better understanding of those terms.
Yes. So just for a visual perspective, we generally have, I would say the city is all of our assets are very liquid. I could pull any out at any time. We are currently only investing in the two county pools and county and state pools. So with less than 24 hour notice, we can pull all the money out that we needed to that's invested in them. I will say with the general fund balance, we have more than that liquidly available in our current bank accounts. But with our fund balance that we operate with, we generally don't fluctuate more than 10 million in a given time period. At the beginning of a fiscal year, we obviously have more cash after the first property tax bills comes in January. So that's when we are higher with our cash levels, and then as we go through the rest of the fiscal year, those dwindle down, and then it spikes again. But in relation to our fund balance, that usually remains about the same. We analyze it after every financial report is issued to move any unassigned fund balance to other funds. This usually means it stays in our bank accounts and is invested in capital infrastructure and capital projects that typically take longer to actually construct and expend funds for. So we sit on a lot of cash generally. I hope that answered your question.
It did. Thank you. And then I'm giving him time to look.
Go ahead.
What was the impact to the budget now that the one-time monies are gone or pretty much gone? Or was there a huge impact?
To our operating budget, not so much, because the one-time money all went into special revenue funds and then basically into a segregated fund for those specific purposes, and it didn't change how we operate on a daily basis. With this budget, it is a rollover budget, so we're not proposing anything out of the ordinary and extraordinary because we do anticipate a recession coming in. So with that in mind, we scaled back on any additions that we would have normally proposed. Last year's budget included a lot more because the outlook for the year, the economy in general, was better.
Thank you.
I wonder if you could speak on, you mentioned the lowering of a sales tax due to recession or perceived recession.
Yes. So we utilize HDL, which is a sales tax consultant, and they serve numerous communities in California. They have a big team that analyzes the economic drivers that really impact our sales tax. And so we rely on them for projections, and we utilize those projections. And because of the impending recession, they actually estimate that our sales tax will go down slightly, basically by 0.5%. And so we factored that into our sales tax revenues projections, which leave it basically flat, going down just slightly.
And what are the sales tax projections with that?
With that,
down?
it's about 23 million is what our sales taxes basically come to in the general fund.
That would be a tax at a 9% or 9.5%. I'm not sure where we're at.
We are not at the full percentage. It's 8.25, or I don't recall the exact amount, but I can pull that up for you. We're at 9.5. 9.25, but it's we're at 9.5 currently.
When will we anticipate to include projections for the property tax for the new developments that we have going on right now? The old Vincent Center and the old Pioneer School.
Oh. We will, once we get the updated rolls and appraisals from the county, as tax assessor, we'll include those in. We typically don't get the actuals because it's such a, until they've actually gone through their whole process with those sales and everything closes out. We usually don't see that until the first allocation that we get, for as far as like, here's what you're going to receive from those properties. And of course, when the transaction happens, that's always like a true up year too.
If I could contribute to that, to say there's a lag and it's significant. Until these developments, which are for sale units, get white paper from the state, close escrow, which establishes a new assessed valuation, it takes a year. So we are a long way out from seeing the general fund revenue gain from that. It varies from tax rate area to tax rate area, but our share is far less than the 1%. We don't get the entire tax portion, the property tax. We only get a smaller percentage of that. I see some other people here. Councilman Cantos. JD, did you want to make a question or a comment? You'd be welcome. I'm sorry. Welcome. I'm glad you're here. Thank you for being here.
Good evening, Jefferson DeRue, longtime resident. I saw you mentioned overtime for the fire department. Was that last year's overtime, or is that this year's projected overtime use?
So the 7.3 is what we are trending at to hit this fiscal year, and then 7.1 is proposed for next year. Particularly in fire, they've had a lot out on injuries, and they've also had a lot of vacancies. So when that occurs, they're obviously going to be spending more on overtime for the existing employees. And so with hopefully getting a full staff, as they are just about to hire 7 new firefighters, I believe, that they're putting through the academy. We're hopeful that they'll move to more of a full status staffing so that their overtime will then be decreased.
Okay, I'm kind of slow. So let me ask, last year's overtime was less than projected this year's budget projection?
Last year's was 6.4 million.
Okay.
Yes. And then, which is what we budgeted for this fiscal year, and they are surpassing that amount at 7.3.
Okay, because the last presentation I attended, the chief said that obviously overtime's never going to just go away. However, there was also a commitment that with the additional staffing, we would see a significant reduction in that that area. And you kind of answered my question by saying that there's pending staffing coming on board. So we don't have any new staff in the fire department from last year that are already gone through the academy and are boots on the ground, so to speak?
They did hire some at the beginning of last fiscal year, but then I guess
if I may, last August we swore in 9 new ones at the ceremony at Fire Station 2 in August. But we had some attrition, expected anticipated retirement, and we had some transfers out. People were recruited by or left our service to join other departments. The majority of this expenditure is directly related to our need to have minimum manning, minimum staffing at each one of our firehouses. We run 3 on an engine, and we can't go below that. If we've got 12 out at once, injured on duty, out, IOD, overtime is our only place to go at the moment. So that was a major contributing factor.
Okay, so then I guess my takeaway is that staffing really isn't the solution to the overtime issue, because it was kind of proposed, or the justification was we get additional staffing in the fire department, we'll see a reduction in the overtime. And from what I'm hearing, it's based, and from the previous presentation that the chief gave us, there are so many other factors that there doesn't seem to be a solution to the rollover of the overtime.
Well, I mean, that's a fair point, but I'd like to say, I believe in our public safety departments, we are understaffed. I think our response times in the fire department don't meet national standard, and I think response times in our police department are unacceptably long, and public perception of safety and public safety is affected in both of our frontline departments. We're not overhired, and we're not keeping up with it, in my opinion. Last year in our fire department, and I think you were here for the fire department evening, we ran quite nearly 10,000 calls. So calls for service is up, but staffing isn't.
So what is the ideal number for the fire department, since you're saying we're understaffed? What is, in your estimation, the ideal number of firefighters that we need?
If we're running 70 now, I would think we could easily staff up to 75. We were down to 66 or below. And a point to be made about our staffing in the fire department, we're not only understaffed in terms of field services, we're understaffed in terms of administration services. Fire Prevention Bureau, fire inspections, admin support. We could well justify additional full-time positions in each of those operational areas right here at the City Hall admin headquarters, but we've continued to make as a priority the field services. If I were to add, if additional money came out from the sky or somewhere, I would think I would continue to add in field services first. The best way to answer your question about, what staffing is appropriate, I think, would be for this city to do a standards of coverage, basically a professional analysis of what's at risk in the community, fire prevention and control master planning, and then an honest community conversation about what are acceptable levels of risk. When you call 911, everybody knows a kitchen fire doubles in size every 5 minutes. And when you're waiting for a response as a resident, it can be very very frightening, and I think as a community we need to do better. I don't have solutions for you tonight, but with respect to your question about the fire department, I think a standards of coverage analysis, which would cost $100,000 or a bit more than that, would be well justified.
Now, would such a study take into consideration the type of calls that the fire department runs?
It would.
I mean, we've heard for year after year that they're probably at the higher end for medical calls than there are actual fires. So is changing the model a possible solution to overtime? In other words, contracting with an ambulance service, AMR, or whatever other services are out there to run those sort of calls. I know the city loses money, reimbursement from the state and county, but it would free up the need to backfill some of these absenteeism and what have you. Possibly.
I think an SOC would address some of that. I can tell you a lot of the private ambulance providers right now are having a harder time than us with manpower. So some of the long-standing ambulance providers, the certified companies that operate in this county, can't get paramedics either. And so there's quite a competition for all of that at the moment. The pendulum has completely swung. Was a time in LA County, a decade ago, you'd fly a firefighter job and have 1,000 people apply for one job. Well, that has completely flipped now. And it's not as easy to hire firefighters or police officers as it was just a few years ago. These are precious commodities, and we need to not only attract them, but we need to retain them. I think another possibility that could be explored in an SOC would be the idea of regionalizing public safety services. I would be extremely reluctant to suggest that the city should contract county sheriffs. I think that'd be a very bad move. I've spent half my career serving LA County contract cities and would not want to go there. But there might be some regionalization opportunities with respect to fire and EMS. And I think it's probably worthy of a conversation.
Last question, if you'll indulge me. In this budget, is there any idea of trying to increase the police department in any way? Because I remember last budget, we kind of had that last minute increase in 3 other areas. Is this one taking into consideration the need of the police department, the increase of staffing?
You ask a very good question. I'm going to ask Stephanie to answer it with respect to what is our operating margin in the general fund in the coming year. Do we have the ability to afford it? I can clearly see a need for more public safety police too. Certainly. We've made some operational changes there. Chief Bell did a really good job of bringing back the overlap shift, which I think has a significant effect, as the shift change and the call volume increases during that peak period. But I think we're, by any national standard, understaffed in police as well. And I'd like to see more police officers tomorrow. But can the city afford it? I'm going to ask Stephanie to speak to this question of what is our operating margin in the general fund. I think you'll see it's pretty thin. Well, can she answer first? And then we'll stay here as long as you like, but I just wanted her to address that piece.
Touching on the operational margin, as I mentioned, the net change in fund balance is only estimated to be around $176,000. One police officer costs more than that annually, so we did not have capacity to add any police officers to this budget, if that answers your question.
Yeah, no, I can see the problem there. But in my way of thinking, we added additional departments to the city operation, code enforcement. These are working in conjunction with the police department, and I'm wondering if that effort, those monies wouldn't have been better utilized in increasing the police department, because code enforcement is very specific, specifically defined as to their span of responsibility, where the police department covers a far more needed service for the residents.
Now, just speaking from a financial standpoint, those positions also are far less than one police officer. Yes. Like one full-time code enforcement officer compared to one police officer is a significant cost differential. Oh, sorry, you had a follow-up. When you say new money, are you talking about from new properties coming in, things like that? Mm-hmm.
I'm happy to take a run at it if Stephanie's not comfortable. We've got about 400 units under construction right now. If you multiply just like this, looking at it from a distance, if every one of those units were to sell for $600,000, you'd get a certain assessed valuation. And it varies from tax rate area to tax rate area. But if we, of that 1% property tax, we got 17%. For all 400 units, that'd be $408,000. It wouldn't be enough to staff up as I think you're suggesting. I'm not sure there's a straight line correlation between these new residents and the need for, if it's $408,000, 2 additional police officers. But, or even that would be the most effective way to approach it. I think the demands from the state for us to build more housing are certainly going to have consequence. They're wanting us to build, north of 5,300 units in the next planning period. It's going to be a little overwhelming in every respect to provide city services for that many additional West Covina residents. It'll be very, very hard.
Hi, good evening. Colleen Rosati, City Treasurer. I have a question in reference to capital improvement program. Good news that we will be replacing Fire Station 1, and I noticed the cost of $13.5 million. Where will those funds be drawn from?
So right now that is proposed to be a public-private partnership of some form. The property in which the fire station lands on is currently being negotiated or out. A lot of things have to happen with the property before we can proceed with that, but we're anticipating some sort of outside contributions for the property that would go towards the fire station.
So basically you're selling that off?
Correct.
To an outside entity?
Correct.
Which in turn will partner with us and build a fire station?
Yes.
What about the chamber building?
The chamber building is a part of that public works yard property and will probably be part of a sale if that goes forward. I think both the chamber building and old Fire Station 1 are prime candidates for demolition. So that's something that's going to be probably the next thing you'll see in terms of what's happening in the field.
No, I agree. Going back to 2007 when there was a seismic study stating that Fire Station 1 should have been condemned and it was unsafe for our firefighters, which I tried to bring forward to the public, and they took it and said I was trying to close fire stations and make the city unsafe, which wasn't the case. So trying to let people know that building wasn't safe. So I'm all for it. I'm just wondering where the funds are coming from. Just wanted to verify that, clarify. And then I noticed that at the city council meeting on Tuesday, there was an increase for the monthly retainer for the attorneys, and I believe it's $40,000 now. Did you increase that because you're anticipating more litigation, more suits, and do we have the money to increase that?
The monthly retainer does not include the cost for litigation services. So it includes mainly like the review of our staff reports. If I have a random question, if we have working on operational items in which we consult with the attorney, those are all items that are included in that retainer. Litigation is outside of it. And what was the second part of your question? I believe Dave might have...
Also, I would contribute to that to say, Colleen, I think it was more of a reflection of what are the costs of legal services, and the hourly rates that we were paying were too low. The rule of thumb that I would offer to you is that a city should spend between 1% and 2% of its general fund on its legal. And we're keenly aware of the cost of risk management. And I think we're making really good gain there. One of the major ways we've been able to make progress is through our membership in the California Joint Powers Insurance Authority. So with respect to litigation management, a condition of our membership is that they're handling those claims and those lawsuits for us, first dollar on. And so I think the number of outstanding cases, and we review those cases every single month. We go through them. We just went through them this morning again, is diminishing, pretty clear straight line down. So I think we're doing much better in that area.
I didn't hear what the increase was. What were they at before it went up to 40?
30,000 a month.
They were at 40?
No, they were at 30,000 and it went up to 40,000. Their contract actually included annual increases that weren't actually implemented. So I forget how far back it was that they had received their last increase. But they were also, in relation to the hourly rate we were paying for our city attorneys in regards to other attorneys that were paying for litigation and other services, were extremely lower. So that was one consideration that was always put in from staff as well, that even though they did receive an increase, their hourly rate is lower than most of the other attorneys for firms that we utilize.
Thank you for that question. I have to think of my other thought.
Sure.
In the meantime, I have one quick one for you.
Can we?
You want me to get a little closer to this mic?
That's perfect. Thank
A
you.
little louder?
Gotcha.
Will do. David, when we have incidents like the potholes that needed to be filled, trees falling, those funds, are they coming out of special fundings or are they from the general fund, CBDG or whatever those special funds are? Is that where the money's coming from? Because I know that's kind of an unexpected, like the potholes that we've been experiencing. So where's that funding coming from?
If I may, so for something like a pothole, that would come out of our gas tax funds or our other street-related special revenue funds. We do have several of those available to us to use. So for something specific like that, it would come from a special revenue source in which we have set aside funds for.
Thank you.
Also, our money that goes toward pavement management is far more than just gas tax. We've got Measure R, Measure M. We've got a lot of other sources of money, to include some very good news from the Congresswoman about federal money coming our way for betterments on Azusa. But it's always a SB1. There's always other pools of money that we're eligible for and compete for and gain. That you asked a very specific question about one piece of it, which was pothole maintenance. The bill this month for potholes we brought in LA County to supplement our crews. We're so far behind on the potholes. We wanted to supplement under the city service agreement with County Road Department about $15,000 this month just for county crews to run our streets and fill our potholes. So we think we've kept up with it as best we can, but we had an awful lot of rain this year, and rain is the enemy of asphalt.
I totally agree. One last question with regards to litigation. If joining this organization that you mentioned has mitigated that problem, why has there been an increase in the cost that we're paying for the attorney? Didn't we go from 30 to 40? Why the increase? And was it, what do they call that, RFP, pull it out to see if a better price could be obtained?
Well, it's a fair question. The city could at any time issue an RFP and shop for those services like we shop for others, engineering or, name one. We didn't do it this time. The city has enjoyed a sound relationship with the firm that serves as our city attorney, Jones and Mayer. And I think it was justified based on the quality of the work that they do and the fact that they hadn't had their hourly rates adjusted for some time. I know when we go out to bring in other specialized outside counsel, the rates of the specialized counsel are twice what we're paying Jones and Mayer, twice per hour. It's staggering what some of those specialist lawyers can legitimately bill you.
One last question, because I do have to leave. LA County has a program where residents can file a claim for damages suffered by their vehicles as a result of potholes. Do we have that program available here in the city of West Covina?
We do. And we get claims, and if they're justified, and if a tree falls on your car, or there's some problem where we ruin your front end with one of our potholes, we try and settle those very quickly. What we find with the claims is where they get expensive is when you ignore them hoping they'll go away, because they don't. I mean, a typical little trip and fall on a sidewalk costs on average $35,000, $40,000. And, you've not only incurred financial expense with sidewalks, but you've, broken grandma's arm and affected her life. But the cost is, half of it, the lawyers. They get one, we get one, and you're going to lose and you're going to pay. So you're better off just to pay quickly. You're even better off if you can proactively fix your sidewalks. And so we're trying real hard with the pavement management program to be more aggressive about sidewalk repairs prospectively. But we get claims and we evaluate them and we pay them when they're justified. Yeah.
Yes, I did pull up the how to file a claim with the city online. But I believe, Colleen, did you have...
Hi, Colleen Rosati again. I have another question. I'm intrigued by this $13.5 million on this fire station replacement. So what happens to the city yard? Is that part of the deal also? It would be. So would you be tearing down the city yard? Then why do you have budgeted city yard roof $250,000, city yard renovation $750,000, totaling $1 million if you're going to bulldoze it?
That's a fair question. We've got a roof that leaks there at the Public Works Yard, such that it's not fair to ask employees to sit there with the open to the sky condition. And so we didn't have any choice but to fix the roof immediately. So that's why that's being done. We, I guess, could have pretended the problem wasn't there, but these land transactions, when you do development agreements, tend to take years. And we've got people working there, today that need to be in proper workspaces. And so we wanted to address that as a serious, immediate problem. We've been chasing roofs all year long. Got a new roof on the dispatch center. The city hall roof seems to be holding now. It's a long deferred capital expenditure. The city just kind of allowed all of those assets, like many others, to run to failure till they just completely wore out. And then we have to scramble. So we're chasing roofs, and I'm going to continue to do so until I get them all watertight.
What about the $750,000 replacement or renovations? If you're going to bulldoze the city yard building, why would you renovate it for $750,000?
We haven't brought that project forward yet, but I think there's a need there that would in fact be justified if we were going to stay. So that's a future decision.
Okay, so if you don't use that $750,000 to renovate, where would you move that money to?
Stephanie, you want to take a run at that one?
Well, there was a number of facilities that we've kind of talked about. A lot of our facilities are in need of improvements, and that was this particular project was talked about and considered with the management team. And while, yes, the building may go down, there are other elements there aside from the roof that probably need to be addressed in order to keep the building operational. So that's why that money wasn't moved. And if it is, it'd probably go to another facility.
So is there a timeline for this $13.5 million replacement? Is it a year or 2 years or 5 minutes from now? Or?
I would put it years away. We are not in contract with a development company to sell that land or to receive the proceeds from the sale. And we're dealing with the state on a surplus land act, validation. These transactions have a way of taking multiple years to bring to fruition. It's not likely to be anytime soon.
So if we're going to go into a partnership with someone who will help replace this fire station and get rid of the little Chamber of Commerce building, which is an eyesore, I agree, what do they want in return? I've heard different things. Just a clarification, if you know.
Well, when we put it out the last time, we solicited proposals with kind of an open architecture. I think the thinking was we'd try and get some mixed use there, maybe a hotel, maybe hotel and apartments. But when it goes out again, we'll survey the market and see what proposals we get. I would think mainly housing. In this market, housing seems to be pretty viable.
So it would be housing in that space where the city yard is, because the rest of it would be taken up for fire, I assume, or pretty close to it, that corner.
Well, one of the conversations we've had about replacing Fire Station 1 on a permanent location is to move it to the Civic Center campus. Now, I've got some very preliminary plans I'd be happy to share with you that show it going over there next to the library.
I'd like to.
Okay.
Thank you.
Sorry, I'm making myself through this 266-page document here. My question was regards to pension payout. Looking here at fire, police, and not seeing a line item there. Just curious, what is our annual pension payout?
I'm sorry, our UAL payment? Or just a regular pension? Because the regular pension that the employees pay in our annual rate contributions is included in the budget. However, I won't say eliminated, we financed our unfunded obligations with CalPERS in 2020 and 2021, and therefore moved it over into, now we make bond payments on that, so it's in our debt service, no longer in a general fund expense towards pension obligations, if that's what you're looking at.
And what would that amount be? I guess what I'm curious about.
Yes. So let me pull that up for you, because I don't have that amount memorized for next fiscal year. But here, 20, one of our last sales. So for next fiscal year, for example, we'll be paying $11.1 million to our lease revenue bonds that we financed.
I think that the number you were looking there was $204 million. And at the time we did that pension transaction, we were carrying that debt at CalPERS and paying them 7%. So we got the city rated. We went to Moody's and Standard & Poor's. We got ourselves an A+ rating. And we took that debt to market and basically think of it as a mortgage refinance, no cash out. So we went from 7% to 3.72% fixed and kept the tenor the same. So the time term didn't extend, and the amount of debt payments dropped drastically as a result of dropping it from 7% to 3.72. In that single transaction, we achieved a net present value savings of about $52 million.
Okay, so it's not just a simple net burden or annual burden that's being realized?
I would hope nobody thought that was simple. That was a big deal for us.
Yeah, no, I get.
And,
I understand everything.
And actually, I think saved the city from some other unpleasant choices in that moment. I think that year we had projected general fund balance of about 1.9 million. The numbers that Stephanie's shown you tonight were north of 20. So in just a few short years, we've really shifted in the right direction. Doesn't mean we can start overspending. We're going to have to be very careful. But it was an effective transaction that worked out really well for us.
Hello, it's Marcia again. Really quick, on your handout, the first square says balanced budget, but citywide it's not balanced. Did I miss that slide when you discussed that?
So the general fund is structurally balanced when we talk about that. Obviously, for citywide, we're utilizing a lot of our special revenue funds from fund balance. That's generally all of our special revenues either are reimbursed or we're already accumulating those and only using the fund balance. But when I speak about balanced, I'm talking about in regards to our general fund being structurally balanced, where we have the excess of, it's a small excess of 176, but we do have an excess and we're not dipping into reserves.
And what's causing that? About roughly 6 million difference.
6 million. I'm sorry, 6 million?
123 to 129. So you only have 123.6 in revenues, but 129 in expenditures citywide.
Yes. So we're using the fund balances in our special revenue funds for a lot of that. So that 129 included in that is our ARPA expenditures, for example, which we received 18 million over the course of 2 years. So that's sitting in our fund balance, but it's not going to be new revenue for that year. The same goes for a lot of our Measure R and M. We have significant fund balances in those funds. So we're proposing projects to actually do for streets out of those. So we'll be using down our fund balance. So we don't have an offset of revenue on that, on the citywide side. So those are some examples of where that comes in, mainly on the capital project side. We want to accumulate enough millions of dollars to do a significant project, like a sewer project, for example, is about, I think, $3 to $5 million. So that's accumulated over so many years in order to spend that down.
Marcia, we're having some fun. We've got long deferred needs, and we've saved up some of these restricted monies to address them. For example, we've talked a little bit tonight about paving. Council just awarded the annual paving project. We're going to try and get another one out the door this summer. So we could do 3 or 4, in my opinion, but to get 2 out would be a big step forward for us. Stephanie mentioned the sewer fund. We've got, unmet needs in our master plan of sewers that we could easily spend, $6 million tomorrow, but we've got major capital projects that we're now able to deliver. It's really a pleasure to be able to address them, because the deferred maintenance and the deferred needs were a little overwhelming for West Covina.
Thank you. And then
we love paving streets, by the way. We love it.
We appreciate that. Under service levels maintained, the gray box, the last bullet point talks about tree trimming and landscaping maintenance. Does that include our parks that are looking not so great lately? We don't really see the maintenance trucks as much as we used to, so just wanted to know what is happening with that.
Well, there's a couple things going on with respect to our parks. We're investing in park infrastructure to get all of our buildings to standard, which is, easy to say and hard to do, but we've made good gain about those buildings, getting them roofed, getting them painted, get the toilets functional. We've also been addressing with park Measure A money, major projects. We use CDBG money, for example, for the Friendship Park playground. I don't know if you've seen that one, but it's $1 million playground, and it's a joy. I think it's proving to be a regional attraction, and we were able to qualify it for federal community development block grant funding. It actually won an APWA award. So we know we've got a lot of work to do yet, but we're working hard to line up restricted monies and external funds to tackle those projects that we know need to be done.
But the maintenance hasn't been cut, like
the maintenance is I forgot to say, the maintenance is a private sector contract, and that is running and in place.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Just to add to the parks, see if we could comment on dog park renovation. Dog park.
It's a project which is identified in the CIP, and Stephanie, I'm going to say a wrong number, so correct me or say it before I do. As I recall, it was like we had set aside $1.2 million for Del Norte Park, including a dog park. We've got a lot of needs in Del Norte.
Yes, 1.3 is set aside for that park. It's coming out of the PDF, so the park development impact fees that we received last fiscal year. So this is an example of, you won't see the revenue match the expenditures in this fund because we received it last fiscal year. And so we're sitting on that fund balance, and we're going to utilize that down to actually invest it in the park.
I don't see any other hands. I would welcome it. And I know some people aren't comfortable talking on camera or on microphone. And I'll stick around as long as anyone wants to talk about City of West Covina, local government. It's my favorite subject. So thank you all for coming tonight. And thank Stephanie and our finance department team for a great job.
Thank you. Yes. It will be.